Hi, my name is Roxeanne Prichard. I'm a professor of psychology and neuroscience at the University of St. Thomas, and I am here to talk about athletes and sleep performance. So sleep and athletic performance. This is a field I have been working in for about 15 years with college students, and over the last 5 years have been really focusing on athletic enhancements when teams prioritize and care about sleep. So over the next half hour, I want to convince you of how important sleep is for athletic performance, do some assessments on how you're sleeping, and offer some practical advice for how to sleep better, even as a collegiate student athlete. So first, I just want to take some time and appreciate how important sleep is to functioning. Sleep is something we do with a third or more of our lives. Some of you might be laughing because it's more like 25%, but it should be closer to a third. And when we don't sleep well, we find strong evidence linking sleep to deficits in health and wellness, more injuries, more illness, more accidents, overuse of medication, alcohol, and other drugs. We find GPA deficits, so much so that for a person who sleeps well every night of the week versus a person that doesn't, that's a 0.14 deficit in GPA we can account for, and that's a stronger impact than alcohol use. Sleep and mental health. So when people are sleeping well, they have much better mental health, lower rates of anxiety, depression, lower rates of anger, less suicidal ideation, less anxiety, less stress. So sleep acts as a buffer against these negative mood states. And when you're not in a negative mood state, your athletic performance is, again, much better. We'll talk about this much more. So speed, endurance, injury, and overall performance and retention. Sleep helps it all. So think of it as like the hub and center of your wellness. This wasn't always the case that we thought of as sleep is so important for athletic performance, but really it is central. Just like hydration and conditioning and nutrition, sleep is the foundation from which your performance, not just as an athlete, but as a human living being, will flourish. Now, there's three elements of good sleep, and I feel like we've kind of focused more on one aspect, forgetting the other two. The first is that sleep schedule is consistent, that you're going to bed about the same time every night, give or take an hour. You're waking up at the same time every morning, give or take an hour. You're not going to bed at 10 p.m. on the weekdays and 2 a.m. after a game, right? So it's about the same schedule. I'll explain why that is soon. Sleep needs to be restorative. So when you get sleep, you need to make sure that nothing is impeding that sleep. And a lot of the things that can make sleep not restorative could be your surroundings. Maybe the residence halls aren't conducive for sleeping. Maybe the hotel rooms when you're traveling are loud or too light or too hot or noisy. But they can also be from your body. Maybe you have like restless legs and your legs just need to twitch a lot before you go to sleep. Maybe you have sleep disordered breathing. Or more likely, it could be that you're having trouble unwinding. You're having trouble kind of relaxing your thoughts to go from an activated mental state into a quieter, more relaxed state, which invites sleep in. Lastly, sleep needs to be sufficient. So for young adults, especially athletes, that's going to be in the 8 to 10 range. You know you're getting enough sleep when you don't need an alarm clock to wake up, right? How many of you can sleep until you're done sleeping and not use an alarm clock? That is what we're going for. That's what the professional athletes are going for. And I'm hoping we can find some strategies to do that as well. So we need to talk about kind of what makes you sleep when. There are four big categories I want to have you thinking about. The first two are biologically driven. So your sleep debt. Basically, how long have you been awake? How much sleep debt do you carry? So how much is there a difference between how much you want to sleep and how much you're actually sleeping? And when you get too much of a sleep debt, you're going to go to sleep no matter what, even if that's in class. I'm wondering how many of you have fallen asleep in class. So for those of you who are kind of falling asleep on the bus, falling asleep in transit, falling asleep all the time, falling asleep when you're getting your ankles taped, that to me means that your sleep debt is an enormous driver of your mental state, and we need to get more sleep to address that. Circadian rhythm is your body's biological preference. It's not your choice, it's what your genetics show you, of when you like to have your first awakening in relationship to the first light of day. So morning people kind of like to rise with the sun or even before then. And more evening types don't start to feel alert sometimes till hours after the sun has risen. And I'll have some ideas for how to make evening types make sure that they're protecting their sleep. Now, environmental cues can shift our circadian rhythm, often delaying it if there's a lot of stimulation in the evening. So bright lights on a Friday night are going to delay your circadian rhythm, making it hard to fall asleep. Parties, other social cues, food availability late at night is going to shift our rhythm a little bit later so that our body doesn't want to go to sleep. So big part of being a successful student athlete and getting enough sleep is going to be watching your evening environment to making sure it's kind of quiet and calm and dark such that your body can get to sleep. Lastly, humans do a lot of drugs. I'm including caffeine, alcohol, melatonin, antihistamines, all these things. Pretty much most of the drugs humans take for recreation, for meals, or prescription are going to impact sleep in some way. And that's something you'll want to talk with your athletics team about if you are worried about something in a pre-workout supplement that is interfering with your sleep. Like the half-life of caffeine can be like 8 hours longer if you're on birth control pills. And that is going to make your recovery sleep really hard to come by. So let's talk about that, finding the right sleep for your circadian rhythm. This hopefully will align with your athletic schedule. So some people wake up super early naturally, some people wake up later. I think it's going to be hardest for the night owls who have to do like morning lifts or morning workouts. But most of us have this nice circadian rhythm that helps our bodies prepare for the day. So about an hour before you wake up, your body's going to increase your body temperature, your dopamine, your cortisol, all these things to kind of help you wake up. If when you wake up, you are cold and miserable and sluggish, your body's not done sleeping. Your circadian rhythm hasn't kind of woken you up with these chemicals. Melatonin is a major signal for when we have nighttime. So when we have a kind of a marker that it's time to sleep, but melatonin is suppressed by light. So we need to kind of really making sure those evening hours are as dark as we can make it. So sleep cycles are genetically coded. Again, some people kind of wake up earlier, some people later, and that's genetics. For those night owls who are student athletes, try to get bright light as early as you can in the morning. This will help entrain your rhythm to the morning, and avoid bright lights and caffeine in the evening. You might, and talk with your trainer about this or your medical team, it might be wise to take small doses of melatonin in the dark before bed, and like hour or two before bed, to help night people kind of get more in line with the schedule you need for athletics. So next, after we've talked about like when you're getting enough sleep and how important that consistency is, one of the reasons that consistency is so important is about 10 to 20% of all the genes are in our body are under the circadian rhythm. So we need to have that synchronized. Second is we need restorative sleep. If your body, if your sleep doesn't feel restorative, you need to ask yourself why. Is it your surroundings? If so, getting like darker shades, room darkening shades is important. Earplugs can be important. Eye masks can be important. Turning down the heat so you're sleeping in a colder room can help. Is it your body? So some of the major bodily impediments to restful sleep is if you have restless leg syndrome, which is more common in people who have low iron. So if you're finding your legs just like won't stop jittering before night, talk to your trainer, talk to your medical team about that. Could be as easy as an iron supplement. Another sort of bodily impediment to sleep is if you have maybe a lot of neck tissue, maybe you have like long, strong, thick neck or really big tonsils, that can make for sleep apnea type breathing. And I'm going to make the sound of it. Often you don't know that you have sleep apnea, but anybody who has watched you sleep would know. So if you're sleeping like and kind of gasping and making that snoring, gasping noise during sleep, which somebody else has to tell you about, talk to a trainer to make sure that you're getting more oxygen during your sleep so it can be more powerful, more effective. What's most common in young adults is having too much what's called pre-sleep cognitive arousal, where your brain and your mind are just kind of going, and it's hard to quiet down that inner voice to get sleep. So if that's the case for you, I'd recommend a couple of different things. If you have a prayer or a meditative practice, that's a really good way to get out of your mind and into like a better headspace. Relaxation or visualization could be good tools as well. Sometimes just reading a short story or listening to a podcast in the dark quietly can help transition and quiet down the mind. Breathing exercises are really helpful too, because they're activating the parasympathetic nervous system and slowing down your body to kind of relax into sleep. If you're having trouble with this or want some techniques, please talk to psychologists. There are many great strategies you can use to kind of get your mind to transition to the falling asleep stage. So I know college athletes have so many impediments to sleep. Like your travel time might be big. You might only have access to facilities at a certain time. The schedule might be inconsistent, where some days you have to wake up early, sometimes you don't. If you work out too late, that can make your body temperature and your cortisol spike, which can make it harder to fall asleep. You might have pain or drinking too much, or meal availability would be wrong. Maybe you've heard kind of weird things about sleep before that cause you to do things that are kind of even counter to good sleep. Hotel rooms can be weird. You can be anxious about a big meet and not have like the tools to quiet your brain down. There might be drinking or bright lights at night or hunger. All of these things can impair sleep. So I'd encourage you to kind of talk with your team together about what of these do you find is interfering with your sleep and kind of problem solve what you can do about it. Third category, making sure you're getting enough sleep. So this is NCAA research. Men's and women's still both look pretty sleep deprived. But if we're assuming that most college athletes need between 8 and 10 hours for optimal performance, these are the average hours reported, and that's probably an inflation of the actual sleep students are getting. So again, you know you're getting enough sleep when you don't need energy drinks to stay awake. You're not falling asleep all the time in the bus. You wake up naturally. That is the ideal state, and that's when you're going to have peak athletic performance. So let's talk a little bit about like what sleep is for and what is it actually doing and how can that help performance. Sleep has a couple different stages. Deep, slow wave sleep in the first half of the night is when we have that human growth hormone secreted. That's when we're repairing muscles. That's when we're having increased antibody production. This is when our brain cells are actually shrinking like 60%, and we are clearing out metabolic waste from our brains that is associated with brain injury. So like repetitive, like heading a soccer ball, getting slammed to the mat and wrestling, all of that is going to cause minor brain, like a little cellular damage, but deep, slow wave sleep can actually filter that out, and it's processed through the lymphatic system. So sleeping deeply here allows your body and brain to repair itself. Hugely important. If you're prone to lingering injuries, one of the things I'm going to guess is you're also not getting good sleep because the physical repair of that tissue is amplified from deep sleep. Now, REM sleep is when we have dreaming. That comes more in the second half of the night. This is important for learning. This is important for emotional processing. And it's almost like a reset button for your mood. So getting enough REM sleep is important for your brain to kind of visualize different concepts, visualize literally different plays in your sports performance, and figure out, okay, what is important? What should I forget? What memory should I hang on to? How do I approach that with like an even keel mood? All that work is being done by the brain in your sleep. Is great. You don't even have to be awake for it. So don't think of sleep as like wasted time. Think of it as brain training time, because that is literally what is happening here. So what happens if you're not getting enough sleep? In short, you're performing kind of drunk, even if you just stay up 2 hours past your normal, or if you're only sleeping 6 hours a night and being awake for 18 hours. By the time you go to bed, you're performing at the equivalent of a 0.05 blood alcohol level. Stay awake a couple hours more and you're legally drunk in terms of your deficits and performance. So not getting enough sleep kind of is toxic for the brain, and that's going to impair your performance. It's going to impair your decision making. So I want to pause here and do a little bit of assessment to try to get a sense of how tired are you. So think back to the last couple of weeks, and what I want you to do is consider in these various situations, and we're going to add these numbers up, would you never fall asleep? Like there's no way you would ever fall asleep here. Or maybe every once in a while, 2, I can see it, or 3, yeah, I'm probably dozing off. And here, falling asleep is like the dropping of the chin, closing of the eyes, that thing, that's dozing off. So sitting and reading during the day, you've got your study hours. Are you falling asleep? 0 through 3. Sitting to watch TV during the day. Are you falling asleep? Sitting in lecture or at a team meeting. Likelihood that you're falling asleep. You're on the bus for more than an hour. Are you asleep? Stretching out to lay down. So you're not planning to take a nap, just lay down. Are you asleep? Sitting and talking to somebody. Do you fall asleep mid-conversation? Sitting quietly after lunch. Or you're driving a car and there's a long red light or a train crossing. Does somebody need to beep to wake you up? So add these numbers together. This can range the total from 0 to 24. If your number is under 5, I've got no concerns about your sleepiness. If you're 5 to 9 or 10, like you might get a little bit of performance enhancements if you try to get better quality for sleep. If you're 10 or higher, which sometimes up to a third or half of athletes are, that really means your sleepiness is impeding your performance, and you've got a lot of room to gain in terms of your overall well-being, your athletic performance, your cognitive performance, your mood, your recovery from illness and injury. So really pay attention to that if your number was higher here. This is a great study. This is in elite athletes, and what they're looking at is same runners on times when they're well rested versus when they're not. And what you actually see is that following sleep restriction, not getting enough sleep, energy expenditure decreased. So the body's less likely to be able to use energy well. With that, maximal aerobic power decreased. And here's the kicker: the time to hit the wall, the time to exhaustion when you just can't go anymore, was decreased by about 11%, 37 seconds faster. So imagine how many plays are won in who's quickest to the ball, who gets the tip off, who sees that move happen first, who is able to just to drive that a little bit more. That's pretty much all the sports, and that's something that's profoundly impacted by sleep. I'm hoping I have this queued up correctly. Okay, I might not. This, and I'll encourage you to watch this on your own. Kendall Ellis's 4x400 to win the collegiate national championships was one of the most amazing kicks I've ever seen in the last lap of a race. And the reason I want to put that that famous race she had before she went on to win the Olympic gold in the 4x400 was that she has always been a sleep advocate. Always. To see kind of what she was able to pull out a couple of years ago in this final was only possible because her brain, her body was getting sufficient sleep. Another thing I want to highlight, and then we'll kind of go and talk about some tips for sleep, is the rates of injury. So you might be thinking, what does sleep have to do with injury? Couple things. One, if you are not getting enough sleep, you're kind of borderline drunk. That's going to mean you're more likely to twist your ankle doing silly things. You're more likely to just not be alert and make pseudo dangerous plays when your body would know how to kind of hold yourself in better posture if you're well rested. Another thing is the bodily repair. Those genes, that 10 to 20% of your whole body's genes are under the circadian rhythm. And during slow wave sleep, the ones that are doing repair and recovery are amplified. So if you're not getting that deep slow wave sleep or consistent sleep, you're not going to do the type of micro injury repair that's so important for muscle growth, for kind of keeping those ligaments healthy. So first of all, I just want to kind of back up. This is a large data set, over 100,000 students, student athletes. And what we're looking at is the rate of injury over the last year. So major break, sprain, tear. 11% of non-athletes on average had a major injury, 26% of athletes. So you're more injury prone. But for both groups, if we ask that same group, hey, do you have a little trouble sleeping? The ones that had sleep difficulties were almost double the injury rates for the ones that weren't. So think about this. If you could save yourself a major injury that could cost you a season or career, would you do that thing? I hope so. And that thing is related to getting good quality sleep, prioritizing your sleep to know that you're going to be a better athlete and a happier person when your sleep is prioritized. So this is a great just kind of infographic summarizing some of the great research on athletes' sleep. And in the blue, it's experiments that show when you get good sleep. In the red, it's experiments on athletes that show when you're not getting good sleep. So let me just go through the kind of boosts that you get from getting good sleep. 40% increase in hitting accuracy in tennis players. You can translate that to like the micro movements for making that three-pointer in basketball, or any other kind of sport that involves precise aiming. Split-second decision-making improves by 4%. So you might not realize this, but your brain, when you're in a sport, is doing a lot of calculus and is doing a lot of statistics. So for example, soccer, hockey, basketball, anything that involves a decision, a quick decision about risk and reward for, should I shoot now? Should I take a shot now? Or should I wait or pass it to somebody else who might have a better positioning? That is a calculation of speed, trajectory, that's all physics, and a risk assessment of what's the likelihood I'll get this, what's the risk if I don't, what's the outcome. So all of this is happening subconsciously. Your ability to make good decisions for increased performance increases when you're well rested. You're also faster, 17% faster in reaction time after hearing a starting block. So sprinters, you're going to get that, the microseconds that are going to add up to winning a race. The quick games like wrestling, where a match can be over in just a couple minutes, that is going to be all quick decisions. Your 40-yard dash is increased a 1/10 of a second when you're well rested. And your alertness has increased too. Now, what happens when you're not getting enough sleep? Your bench press drops by 20 pounds, your max bench press. You're having inattention. So sort of those brain farts or lapses where you're like, whoa, what was that? That increases 3 times when you're not getting enough sleep. And chronic sleep loss is going to reduce your glucose metabolism by 30 to 40%. So you're not getting your body's energy source that it needs to fuel everything. You're not using your food well when you're not sleeping well. So all these things together kind of culminate in a better athletic performance when you're sleeping well. So let's talk about What does it mean to sleep well? Here's another assessment. It's a fairly new one called the Athlete Sleep Behavior Questionnaire, and it asks you from never to always. So I'd like to have you think about this in context from which of these are under your control, which of these are not under your control, and the ones that are not, maybe have a conversation with your athletics team, coaches, staff, about what can we do to get some better protection here. All right, over the last month, do you take naps lasting more than 2 hours in the afternoon? If you do, that's a problem because it's harder to have nighttime sleep. Your circadian rhythm is disrupted then. Do you use stimulants when you train? You should not be needing caffeine. You should not be needing a 350 milligram caffeine supplement that I just learned one of my students just takes dry to perform. That's going to impair your sleep down the road. That's going to impair your performance. Do you work out after 7? Now, the reason this might be a problem is it's increasing your body temperature and your cortisol, testosterone, other things that are going to make it harder to fall asleep. So you need like a body wind down period. Do you use alcohol within 4 hours to go to bed? When you do, you're probably going to have an elevated heart rate at night, and you are actually making your sleep more fragmented. So pull those drinks back to happy hour. I'm not sure if you're even supposed to drink in season, but having it late at night is bad news for sleep. It also suppresses REM sleep, which is when your brain is learning new things. Your bedtime at night varies by more than an hour. That's interfering with the consistency of your sleep. If you're thirsty, that's a sign that you don't have the hydration you need to sleep. If you are having sore muscles, that can be something where you need to talk with your trainers about stretching, pain medication, treating those injuries, whatever it is, thinking about how to minimize that soreness at night. I should say that pain increases at night. It's one of the circadian rhythms. So if you stay up too late past your bedtime, those aches and pains will seem more pronounced. You use lights in the hour leading up to bedtime. So if you've got laptop, phone, so all of these, I recommend a blue light blocker, which they can put on your screens, or you could get the blue light blocking glasses that would help stop melatonin suppression. I think, plan, and worry about my performance when I'm in bed. You need to keep your bed as like a sacred, restful space. You need to have a way to, when your brain wants to be like, oh, let's replay that time I missed a goal. Let's replay that bad move I made. You have a tool in your disposal to kind of put that thought away and transition into a more peaceful visualization, relaxation, breathing exercise that gets you back to sleep. You think, worry, plan about other things not related to sport when I'm in bed. So for those of you who are prone to anxiety, this is where working with a psychologist can really help you get the tools you need. Might be behavioral, might be cognitive, but you need some tools in your toolbox not to worry so much while you're trying to go to sleep. Don't want to be using sleeping pills or tablets to help you sleep. You shouldn't be needing to wake up to go to the bathroom frequently. You shouldn't be making that noise when you're trying to sleep. Again, could be as simple as just getting a better fitting retainer that moves your jaw forward, or maybe something more involved like a CPAP, but getting the oxygen you need during sleep is transformative in performance. I wake myself up with muscle twitching. So again, a small percentage, maybe 5%, might have what's called restless legs disorder, or periodic limb movements, where your body just moves a lot trying to get to sleep and during sleep. And this is something that with medical treatment can really help. I get up at different hours in the morning. Again, maybe you have a 6 a.m. lift 2 days a week. That's going to change your circadian rhythm if you're not always getting up at 6 a.m. At home, your sleep environment isn't ideal, too light, too noisy, uncomfortable. So that's something you can control. So again, be thinking about what's under your control, what's not. Think about how can you improve your home environments or your hotel environments that will amplify your sleep, or travel gets in the way of building a consistent sleep routine. So be thinking about these things and think about what can you do to help get better sleep. Here are some tips. Again, can't stress that consistent schedule enough, because when you wake up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, your body learns how to get yourself asleep. So just like there's a whole bunch of changes in the hour before you wake up, there's a whole bunch of body changes in the hour before you go to sleep. Like your body temperature drops, that can help you feel tired. You start to slow down mentally, that can help you kind of get to sleep. But if this only works if it's on a consistent schedule. Have a travel sleep pack. So earplugs, eye masks. Some people like to have a scent like lavender pillow spray or patchouli or whatever that kind of mentally triggers the thought or the association of feeling relaxed and sleepy. A lot of people travel with a pillow that they like for their body. So they have different pillows for back sleepers, side sleepers, stomach sleepers. Some people travel with 2 or 3 pillowcases. So like the one you have on the bus or the train might get kind of grimy, but then you have another cleaner one underneath that you can use for the hotel for sleeping. Gotta get the electronics off. You can't be texting and checking things and also preparing for bed. Those are mutually incompatible behaviors. A hot shower before bed. The reason this can work, hot shower to cold room, is you are lowering your body temperature when you take a hot shower because your blood is going to your limbs and your skin and the periphery to cool off. So that can help you fall asleep. Really, really, really important to have a go-to relaxation routine. So I have a couple podcasts that I can listen to fall asleep. I have breathing exercises like box breathing, 2 in, 2 hold, 2 out, 2-second hold, and then increasing to 3 and 4 seconds. That if I do that in a pyramid, I'm usually out, but sleep before the 5th cycle here. And you don't want to be spending more than 20 minutes in bed not being able to get to sleep. If that's the case, get up in dim light, go do some homework till you feel sleepy again. It will happen. So there's got to be this sleep window. So I appreciate your time and your attention, and I hope I've offered some helpful tips. All these things in the periphery, not good for sleep. All right, thank you so much, and I will stop recording.